All right, Linda, thanks so much for being on the Friends with Wheels podcast. My first question that I have for you is tell the audience a little bit about you and how you started, and we can go from there.
Sure. So my name is Linda. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. I kind of weirdly got into this realm after I went through a divorce myself. So I started grad school in 2017 and kind of did a slow journey through that and started an internship experience right when COVID was starting. So that was pretty interesting. But have been working in the mental health space for, gosh, almost 6 years now since COVID, and been providing individual counseling and couples counseling to people in Washington since I started.
Because I was gonna ask, what do you do like nowadays?
Yes, so I work at a private group practice in Redmond. Typically, what I do is see people for individual therapy. I also see couples for couples therapy. I see families for family therapy. That's most of my day job. I'm also the clinical coordinator at our site, so I do a fair bit of background stuff, kind of admin work, making sure our office spaces are assigned, that we have all of the inventory we need for people to do their jobs, that sort of thing. So most of my day is spent doing therapy, which is pretty cool.
hmm I know you said you did a lot of individual therapy and couples therapy, but do you have a favorite or?
Oh, I think I don't know that I have a favorite. I think I like working with couples because it usually gets a little spicier than not. As you can imagine, we're usually talking about conflict and things can get kind of heated, but I actually enjoy that part. But I really love individual therapy, just getting to know people. I really like working with people for long periods of time. So most of the folks I've been seeing for around 2 to 3 years. So we have really good relationship. I know them well, and that is probably my favorite part, just knowing people on that
hmm
level.
And what sorts of modalities do you use for both individual and couples therapy?
Yeah, so for couples therapy, I'm trained in the developmental model for relationships. So it's, I wouldn't say new, but I don't know a ton of people who are trained in that. And that's primarily what I use. I use a lot of the same kind of techniques and interventions in individual therapy as well from that model. And I am a pretty solution focused human. So I like to kind of get into like action plans, solving where we can make changes. I do a lot of that work as well. All that to say, that doesn't always work. I also love acceptance and commitment therapy, if anyone's familiar with that. And that really is based in um, looking at like values and how we behave and if that aligns with like who we are and how we want to behave. That's,
hmm
yeah.
And what's the developmental model in relationships? I'm curious.
Yeah. So the kind of the cornerstone of the model is that we're all working towards differentiation. And basically, what that means is do we know what our wants and needs are? And do we feel comfortable communicating those? And in relationship to other, like, can we kind of understand how our relationships are so that we can know what other people's needs are, actively receive when they communicate their needs to us or their wants to us. So it's a lot of figuring out like, are we defensive? Are like what's kind of getting in the way of being able to like hear and receive messages from people, or what's getting in the way of us being able to express our true needs and our true desires to other people. Um, that's kind of the framework for it. It's pretty interesting.
hmm And what about the solution focused model that you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that is very much figuring out like where do we want to get? If if we felt a little bit better, like what would that look like in our day-to-day lives? And that's kind of helping people figure out, um, like what what would life look like if things were better? If maybe we were less anxious or less depressed? Like what would be different? And then once we identify those changes, we get to figure out what steps we're going to take to get there. So pretty action oriented, um, but can be really helpful for people.
hmm And do you see that? What sorts of issues do you see with a lot of couples, that are sort of it's because it's never easy, because it's like teamwork, So like, what things do you notice like in the therapy room with that couples like struggle with?
I would say pretty much every couple that I've ever seen has come in saying that they want to work on communication. So they want to understand each other better or figure out where the miscommunication is happening so they can get on the same page. I think communication is like the obvious one, but I usually tell couples we have the hot three topics, which is usually um, communication, money, and sex. And if there's kids, we can add a fourth one. And so it's somewhere going to revolve around those three to four things. And usually communication is what's causing a breakdown in all of those areas. But yeah, sex, intimacy, money, and kids, big ones.
Hmm. But isn't also trust and honesty, can it also be sprinkled in there as well? Because if there's no trust, then how, then the relationship doesn't work. And without trust, yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, lots of talks about how to build trust, where trust has been maybe broken in the past. How do we rebuild it? Um, that's sprinkled in definitely. Of course, different couples show up with different problems. Sometimes that's like infidelity or cheating. Um, it really I there's kind of like any scenario that you could imagine, the possibility of that coming through the door is open and on the table. So I think using the developmental model, it can apply to any of the scenarios that people come in with, and that's what makes it a really good model.
Mm-hmm. And like, how do you sort of help a couples through that? And like, how do you sort of act as a I don't want to say like mediator, but like problem solver, like help them with their issues?
You We could definitely use the word mediator. A lot of times I'm kind of in that scenario where I'm coaching people through it. So uh, most of the time, right, couples come in talking about things that they've talked about amongst themselves over and over and over again, but they've not come to some sort of resolution. So I kind of act as the mediator to like slow us down, maybe hear things from a different perspective, pose a different perspective for them to consider. Um, and kind of keep people in check sometimes, right? Like keeping our emotions in check, like being able to regulate ourselves in the moment so that way we can hear what the other person is saying. Like there is a fair bit of mediation that comes with it.
Mm-hmm. And like like is there some sort of, what do you sort of take away from like doing this kind of work?
I think for me, this is a big part of like why I got into this field. So I got divorced when I was 23 years old. I was young, and I didn't have a lot of support, and so it's really fulfilling to me just to be a support for someone in a way that I never got. And so I think giving people a chance to work through things like with that level of support and give them a chance to like get to whatever they are trying to get to. For couples that might be staying together, staying married, sometimes it ends in divorce or breakup. For individuals, wherever they want to go, like I think just knowing that they have a level of support that wasn't offered to me feels really fulfilling to me.
Mm-hmm. And were you a child of divorce, or did your parents ever stay married? Because oftentimes the divorce kind of stems through that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It can, yeah. My parents divorced when I was really young, so it's very familiar in my family. Many folks in my family have been divorced. I stand by my decision. I think it's the greatest decision I probably could have ever made. So I think there is something to say about breaking the stigma around divorce. Sometimes it is the right option. But I think that's definitely informed how I look at things and how I view like if we're talking about divorce, what the impacts could be on other people, as it
Mm-hmm.
definitely impacted me as a child for sure.
Yeah, I bet. So like, is there like a mentor that you looked up to that made you want to get into this mental health space?
No, strangely, and leading up to me deciding to become a therapist, I really hadn't done therapy for myself at all. I had done maybe one or two sessions with one or two people, and it never really stuck. So I kind of came into the world of therapy blind. I didn't know what it was like to really do it as the client. I didn't know what it was like to do it as the therapist. But I actually feel like that was a positive for me. I didn't really have any expectations coming in. And so I kind of had a blank slate to make my own opinions about who I wanted to be as a therapist.
Because ideally, people there would be like a class or some sort of seminar that like in college that you that you sort of take and go like, oh, I want to do this one day. Was there something similar for you, or did it just kind of like happen naturally, or
It happened naturally. It's a kind of a funny story. So when I was in college, I went to the University of New Mexico. That's where I'm originally from, is Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I was a nursing major, and I applied to nursing school. I didn't get in, and I was devastated naturally. But I was minoring in psychology at the time because I thought it was interesting. And I decided that instead of waiting to apply to nursing school, that I was going to switch my minor to my major, and I was a psych major, and that was kind of where it started. It was kind of on accident, but I think it was like the universe intervening and saying, you should definitely not be a nurse, go into mental health. And that's where it started. It was kind of a happy accident.
yeah, just you just kind of ran with it, right?
Yep, I didn't want to wait, so we just made the change and kept on moving.
Mm-hmm. And like, what do you still hope to learn in terms of something new?
Yeah, so the world of therapy is always changing. The learning never stops. There are so many books and podcasts and research coming out about new modalities or interventions to use with clients. People sharing their story about their own mental health journey. So the learning never stops ever. And I think that's part of the fun of therapy is that I don't think I can ever truly call myself like a master of being a therapist because there's always something more to take away. And I love to learn. So I think that is a big draw for me.
Mm-hmm. And like for those who want to study mental health or want to do what you're doing, what can they do?
Yeah, I think honestly, I think I went about it a little bit backwards. I think getting into therapy themselves, great idea. I think therapy should be for everybody. I think access is a problem for a lot of folks, but I do think if people are able to access therapy, that's a great place to start. The education paths look so wildly different depending on what kind of license you want to have and that sort of stuff. But to really understand what it would be like to be in this field, go to therapy.
Hmm.
Go try
My
some
next
therapy.
question, yeah, my next question is what's sort of the stigma around therapy? Because I talked to a mental health therapist and she said oftentimes mental health therapy is for crazy people. Often, well, it's not true. It's for everyone. So like, what's sort of your take on that?
I would agree. I think there is very much a stigma that something has to be wrong with you to go to therapy. Something must be wrong that you can't handle life's challenges without getting support from another human. And that is just so not true. I really think that there is a lot of stigma around specific diagnoses that people can have. Um, and unfortunately, a lot of us work with insurance, and part of playing the insurance game is that we have to diagnose people with a formal diagnosis. And so I think a lot of people are scared of what their diagnosis might be, like if it's going to follow them around for the rest of their life as it's part of their medical chart. Um, but I also think that no, I really think everyone should be in therapy. It is a great time if you have a therapist that you have a good relationship with. Uh, what is bad about receiving support just to get through life? I think there's really no drawbacks.
Hmm. And how important is a therapist-client relationship? Because oftentimes you have to look, like when I did therapy myself, and so I was trying to find that perfect fit. And so luckily I was able to find a therapist that I could gel with. She was neurodivergent, and I sort of caught on to that. So, what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I'd have to find my research, but there is research to say that the therapeutic relationship is responsible for about 40% of your therapeutic outcome. And so, regardless of like what modality a therapist uses, what types of interventions they use, like these other factors, 40% of what a person can walk away from with therapy is just based on if you have a good fit with your therapist. And so, it cannot be overlooked. Like the relationship has to be good. Like you said, you have to gel. Um, it's a huge part of it.
Mm-hmm. And for those who want to look up more information about you or your work, what can they do?
Yeah, so I work at a practice called Blooming Leaf Counseling. We have a website, bloomingleafcounseling.com. There is lots of information about myself or other colleagues that I work with, kind of about the modalities that we use, our individual approach to therapy, that sort of thing. So they are welcome to find me there. I'd also love to hear from anybody directly. If they'd like to email me, they can, just with questions or even support accessing their own therapist. I can provide you with my email at another time if that's helpful, or I could just say it now if that's helpful.
Yeah, for those who want to look up more information, yeah.
Yeah, my email inbox is open all the time. My email is Lynda Lynda at bloomingleafcounseling.com. And any help I could provide to people in answering questions about how to get into the field, how to find therapists, anything that would be helpful. I'm always open for questions.
And what about social media handles? Do you have any social media handles that people should be aware of, like if they want to reach out to you that way?
Email or through the website is best. I don't have a professional social media account. I am not social media savvy very well, so it would be a dream to have like a nice professional place for them to reach me on Facebook or Instagram. I guess stay tuned on that one, maybe in the future.
Okay. On that note, okay.